What if ancient wisdom held, well, the ultimate shortcut to living a truly fulfilling life?
Hmm.
A path to happiness may be so profound, it makes everyday joys seem, I don't know, a little
And
flimsy.
it's a really compelling thought, isn't it? And today, we're actually going to dig into something like that. We're
Mm.
taking a deep dive into quite an extraordinary source.
Right?
It's a sermon titled 51 Taianai, given way back on November 3rd, 2497 in the Buddhist calendar. That's 1954 for us.
1954, wow. So this isn't just some, dusty old
Hey,
document.
not at all. It's a really profound teaching. It lays out these fundamental differences between two types of people, the virtuous and the unvirtuous.
Right.
And crucially, how those differences shape their destinies and, maybe most importantly, their whole experience of happiness.
Okay, so what's our mission with this today? What are we trying to unpack?
Well, our goal is to unpack the core ideas in this teaching, specifically what it really means to be a sattaburut, that's the virtuous, the wise, the noble person, versus an asattaburut, the unvirtuous or foolish one.
Sattaburut and asattaburut. Got it.
Yeah. We'll look at the really challenging actions that define the virtuous path and ultimately try to uncover this escalating nature of happiness that the text describes. It's quite insightful.
Okay, let's unpack this then. So at the heart of this sermon, there's this fundamental distinction, right?
Exactly.
These two opposing types, sattaburut, the virtuous, and asattaburut, the unvirtuous. What does that distinction really mean for, what they can do?
Well, it implies a really deep difference in their actual nature. The text is pretty blunt about it. These two types are so fundamentally different, they can't emulate each other.
They can't imitate each other.
No. It's not just about choosing differently. The sermon suggests there's an inherent inability for the unvirtuous person to truly follow the virtuous path. There's a Pali verse quoted, asantu nanukupanti sattadamo duranvayo.
Okay, what does that mean?
It translates roughly as, the unvirtuous cannot do what virtuous people do. The Dharma of the virtuous is hard for the unvirtuous to follow or imitate. It's difficult, duranvayo.
Wow, okay, so if they can't even imitate each other's core ways, what does that imply for their journey, their ultimate outcome?
Well, taking the bigger view, it means their paths from this world are completely different. The sermon emphasizes this too with another Pali verse. Tasma satanya asatanyaka nanahoti itogati.
Which means?
Therefore, the path from this world for the virtuous and unvirtuous is different. Different. And the outcomes are laid out very starkly. Asantu nirayanti santu sagaparayana.
Let me guess. Bad news for one group.
You could say that. The unvirtuous go to hell. The virtuous go to heaven. Niraya is hell. Saga is heaven.
That's incredibly definitive. It's not like, oh, you get slightly different results. It's entirely separate destinies. So does this mean good and bad actions just inherently lead to unequal results? No balancing act.
Precisely. That's a key point the sermon drives home. It asks us to think about the nature of actions themselves. The text stresses that dharma, good actions, and atta, bad actions, they don't yield the same results.
Not equal.
Not equal at all. Nahi dhammo adhamsha ubhishami vipakinu. Dharma and adharma do not both have equal results. And it follows directly. Adham niraya neti dhammo papiti sugati.
Adharma leads to hell, dharma leads to heaven, plain and simple.
Exactly. Adharma leads to hell, dharma leads to a good destination, sugati, like heaven.
So there's no sort of cosmic scale balancing things out. It's quite absolute in this
It
text.
seems so in this context. The sermon clarifies that dharma means good actions, good mind states, and it links these to scholars or wise people. The Pali term used is related to kvi.
That wise one.
Right, and adharma means bad actions, bad mind states, linked to fools, to kaṇḍa. And these two groups are presented as polar opposites, genuinely unable to follow each other's paths.
Okay, so we have this clear division. Where does the sermon go next? It mentioned challenging actions.
Yes. Having set up this basic division, it then dives into what defines the virtuous life, starting with something quite profound. Giving what is hard to give.
Giving what is hard to give. What does that mean in practice?
Well, the first key trait is summed up in the Pali. Dudadam dadamanana. It means when the virtuous give what is hard to give. This isn't just giving loose change. It's about parting with something extraordinarily difficult to let go of, often involving deep personal sacrifice.
And the sermon gets specific, right? It talks about these 5 great sacrifices. Panjamahaborijak.
It does. And these are really ultimate forms of difficult giving. We're talking about giving your own child as an offering.
Wow.
Giving your spouse, husband or wife.
Mm-hmm.
Giving your own flesh, blood, or even organs.
Seriously.
Yes, giving away all your money, property, land, and the ultimate one, giving your own life.
That's almost unimaginable for most people.
Exactly. The text explains that beings like bodhisattvas, those on the path to becoming Buddhas, they are capable of these supreme acts of generosity. But for the unvirtuous, the asattaburut, it's presented as utterly impossible. They prioritize their own comfort, their own self, above everything.
But surely it's not only about these huge life-altering sacrifices. Does it connect to everyday life at all?
That's a great point. It does bring it down to a more relatable level, actually. The core insight isn't just the what you give, but the how and why, the detachment, the purity of intention.
Okay.
The sermon suggests that even simple acts like giving food or clothes can be seen as giving one's own blood and flesh if, and this is the key, if it's done without any attachment, purely for the other person's benefit, with no thought of personal gain or reward.
So it's about the inner state, the selflessness behind the act, giving of the self, not just the stuff.
Precisely. That radical giving of self, not just possessions, is what marks the virtuous, the sattaburut.
That definitely deepens the meaning. And didn't the sermon also mention leaving worldly life, like becoming a monk or nun?
Yes, ordaining as a monk or a novice, or even a deeply committed lay devotee that's highlighted as another major form of difficult giving. Think about it. You're sacrificing your home, your possessions, your family ties, all those worldly attachments. It's framed as a direct path towards nirvana.
A huge sacrifice of the familiar.
Absolutely. And the sermon, remember, it's from 1954 Thailand, gives this powerful contemporary example. The King of Thailand's incredible support for the Sangha, the monastic community.
Oh, right. You mentioned the date.
Yeah. The text details the massive daily cost back then, something like 2 million baht per day, to support around 300,000 monks and novices, plus 200,000 lay devotees. It worked out to at least 4 baht per person per day, which was significant money then.
2 million a day, that's staggering.
It is. And this was presented as a prime example of difficult giving on a grand scale, done for the greater good, for preserving the Buddha's teachings.
That really puts difficult giving into a massive perspective. And the sermon also mentioned parents, right? Parents letting their children ordain.
Yes, that's another example given.
Yeah.
Allowing your child to leave home and dedicate their life to the spiritual path that's framed as profound sacrifice of personal connection, a difficult giving for a higher purpose.
So what's the underlying message about this kind of generosity? Is it supposed to be easy?
Quite the opposite, according to this teaching. It emphasizes that dana bharami, the perfection of giving, isn't easy if you still have defilements, attachments, greed. The text even says the mere thought of giving can cause physical discomfort for some people.
Like a tightness in the chest.
Something like that, yeah. Real generosity, the effortless kind, apparently requires practice, skill, maybe even cultivation over many lifetimes to get beyond those narrow, self-serving motives. It's about the purity, the detachment, not just the act itself.
Okay. So that's difficult giving. What about the other side you mentioned? The sermon talks about doing what is hard to do.
Exactly. From the challenge of giving, the sermon shifts to the second key characteristic, dukkharam kamakupata, doing what is hard to do.
And what kind of difficult actions are we talking about here? Is it like physical feats?
Not necessarily physical feats in the usual sense. It refers more to difficult acts of self-discipline, self-control, and purification. And it starts with something that sounds simple but is incredibly hard for most of us.
What is?
Cutting off attachment to sensory pleasures. Sights, sounds, smells, tastes, physical touch. Think about our world today. We're constantly bombarded, constantly seeking pleasant sensations. To truly detach from that, well, it sounds incredibly difficult.
Understatement. So how does one practice this detachment?
The sermon points to the rigorous practice of maintaining ethical precepts, or sila. You know, the 5 precepts for lay people usually.
Don't kill, steal, lie, etc.
Right. But then there are the 8 precepts, often taken on special observance days, which are stricter than the 10 precepts for novices. And for monks, the full 227 precepts in the Theravada tradition. Maintaining these perfectly requires constant vigilance and self-control. It's far beyond just casual observance.
Okay, so it's about serious ethical discipline. Does it go further than that?
Oh, yes. This doing what is hard to do extends much further. It includes the whole arduous journey towards spiritual enlightenment itself.
Ah, so the path of meditation and insight.
Precisely. The sermon mentions achieving path consciousness, makajit, or makapanya. This is that first direct transformative insight into the nature of reality, the moment you step onto the supramundane path beyond the ordinary world. That's considered extremely hard to achieve.
So it's not just about behaving well, but about intense inner work, striving for liberation, things like sotapanna, sakadagami.
Exactly those, moving through those progressive stages. Sattapanna, or stream entry, where you're guaranteed eventual enlightenment. Sakadagami, the once-returner. Anagami, the non-returner. And finally, achieving arahantship, complete liberation from suffering in this very life. That whole path is the epitome of doing what is hard to do.
That sounds like a lifetime, or many lifetimes of effort.
Indeed. And the text adds that even just maintaining perfect, absolute purity in your body, your speech, and your mind without any deceit, any flaw, any hidden agenda even, that is considered an extremely difficult accomplishment that very few people actually manage.
Just imagine that. Perfect integrity, 204/7, in every thought, word, and deed. That is a serious challenge. Like you said, most of us struggle just getting through the day without some minor slip-up.
It really puts it into perspective, doesn't it? Which leads nicely into the next major concept the sermon introduces, a very powerful one.
Okay.
Dhammo havrakati, Dhammajori.
Which means?
Dharma indeed protects those who practice Dharma regularly, or Dharma protects the Dharma-farer.
Dharma protects. So good actions create a kind of shield. How does that work? Is it magic?
Not magic in the sense of spells, no. It's presented more as a natural consequence. Practicing Dharma, good conduct in body, speech, and mind naturally leads to well-being.
How so?
Well, for one, you gain respect from others, whether you're a monk, a novice, or just a regular lay person trying to live ethically. People trust you, they value you. But maybe more importantly, you gain inner peace.
Ah, the clear conscience thing.
Exactly. Consistent practice of Dharma purifies your mind, your being. It leads to a mind that's radiant, untroubled, not agitated by guilt or fear of consequences. That in itself is a form of protection.
That makes sense. A calm mind is less likely to get into trouble, perhaps. Does this protection extend to those higher states you mentioned?
It does. The sermon connects this protection to achieving the Dhammakaya, the Dharma body, a concept that might need its own deep dive sometime, and also to progressing through those stages of liberation. Sotapanna, Sakadagami, Anagami, Arahant.
Because reaching those states means freedom from suffering.
Yes, freedom from suffering and experiencing only happiness, or perhaps better put, a state beyond our usual ideas of happiness and suffering. The text suggests that even just the aspiration, the sincere effort to purify yourself and aim for these higher states, that itself means Dharma is already starting to protect you. You're aligning yourself with beneficial forces.
So the intention and the effort count too.
Absolutely. And the ultimate outcome is stated clearly. Dhammo sujinishu sukhama vahati.
Let me guess. Dharma brings happiness.
You got it. Dharma well practiced brings happiness. That's the direct benefit. And the final consequence mentioned in this section is nadugati gachati dhammajari.
No bad destination.
Exactly. The Dharma practitioner does not go to a bad destination like hell, but rather goes to a good one. So practicing Dharma seems to guarantee a positive trajectory, both in this life and the next.
Okay, so Dharma practice leads to protection and ultimately happiness. This brings us to the nature of that happiness itself, right?
Yes, this is where the sermon really unfolds the escalating levels of happiness. It starts with the baseline you get from just practicing Dharma well, that purity of body, speech, and mind we talked about.
The inner peace.
Right, immediate inner peace, a kind of simple joy. The text says you can be happy in all postures, sitting, sleeping, standing, walking, because your mind isn't troubled by misconduct. There's nothing nagging at you. It's a foundational happiness.
Nice, but I suspect it doesn't stop there.
Not by a long shot.
Yeah.
The text then dives into the really profound happiness you experience in deep meditative absorption, the states known as jhanas.
Jhanas. What does it actually feel like, according to the sermon, to enter these states?
Well, they're described as states of incredible mental focus and serenity. The mind becomes totally absorbed, unified, leading to an experience of bliss that just completely overshadows ordinary sensory pleasures.
Okay. Are there different levels?
Yes. First, the sermon mentions the form jhanas, the rupa jhanas. There are 4 of these. The happiness experienced here is described as so profound, so intense, that any delight you might have previously taken in sights, sounds, smells, tastes, touches it, just vanishes. You forget about it. It seems totally insignificant in comparison.
So it replaces worldly happiness.
It eclipses it entirely. The text calls the happiness of the jhanas excellent, supreme, and superior to anything in this world.
Wow, superior to anything. And are there states even beyond these form jhanas?
Yes. Then come the formless jhanas, the arupa jhanas. These are even more subtle, more refined states of concentration.
What are they like?
They're described by their objects. the infinity of space, then the infinity of consciousness, then state of nothingness, and finally, the highest one within the realm of existence, called neither perception nor non-perception. Nivasana nasanayatana.
Neither perception nor non-perception. That's hard to grasp.
It is. It's extremely subtle. And the sermon notes that the happiness, or perhaps the profound peace, in this highest state can last for an almost unimaginably long time. The text mentions 84,000 mahakalpas, basically, vast cosmic ages. This is described as the peak happiness within existence.
Peak happiness within existence. That phrasing seems important.
Very important. So you have this incredible scale, basic inner peace, then the supreme bliss of the form jhanas, then the incredibly subtle, long-lasting peace of the foremost jhanas, the highest possible happiness within the cycle of birth and death, bhava.
There's a but. If jhana happiness is so amazing, lasts for eons, what could possibly be beyond that?
This is where the sermon delivers its most startling point. It contrasts all this jhanic happiness, even the highest, longest-lasting kind, which is still within existence, with the ultimate happiness of nirvana.
Which is beyond existence, right? Liberation.
Exactly. And here's the twist. The moment one experiences nirvana, according to this teaching, all those previous forms of happiness, even the most sublime jhanas that seemed unsurpassable just moments before they were suddenly seen as, well, the text uses strong words.
Like what?
Like coarse, rough, debris, even like the remains of a corpse, they're suddenly perceived as not being true ultimate happiness at all.
Wow. So even the peak happiness within existence pales completely in comparison.
Completely. It's a radical redefinition. All worldly joys, all the bliss of meditative states, however sublime they seem, are revealed as temporary, conditioned, ultimately unsatisfactory compared to the unconditioned reality of nirvana.
So what is the happiness of nirvana like then? Can it even be described?
The sermon describes it as subtle and profound. It says it causes the person to become utterly silent, serene, just overflowing with a feeling of bliss they have never ever encountered before. It's apparently an inexpressible joy that leaves you speechless.
Like discovering a whole new dimension of feeling.
That might be one way to put it. Maybe like, imagine you've only ever known satisfaction from, say, sugary drinks. Then you taste pure, clean spring water for the first time. The sugary drinks suddenly seem crude, unsatisfying, maybe even unpleasant compared to the simple, profound purity of the water. Both quench thirst, but one is fundamentally different, purer, more complete.
That's a helpful analogy. So nirvana isn't just more happiness, it's a different kind of reality altogether.
Precisely. And this leads to a beautiful concept mentioned, apasukha versus sukhadaya.
Small happiness and taking up great happiness.
Exactly. Apasukhan is small, limited happiness, which includes even the highest jhanas. Sukhadaya means taking up or embracing the great boundless happiness of nirvana. The truly wise person, the teaching implies, doesn't settle for any limited happiness, no matter how grand it seems.
They keep going.
They keep going, always seeking the higher, the boundless joy. The Buddha himself is presented as the ultimate example of this, as someone who mastered all the jhanas, but didn't stop there, pushing on to find the unconditioned, the ultimate liberation. That's the embodiment of wisdom in this context.
So we've really journeyed through quite a map here, from the basic difference between virtuous and unvirtuous, through these incredibly demanding acts of giving and doing.
Like the sacrifices, the disciplines.
To the idea of Dharma protecting the practitioner, and finally this amazing escalating scale of happiness, culminating in nirvana, which reframes everything that came before it.
It's a profound roadmap, isn't it? It lays out not just a spiritual path, but potentially a whole different way of understanding the trajectory of our lives and what we consider happiness.
It definitely offers a powerful framework. As you, listening, reflect on this deep dive, maybe consider, how do these descriptions of difficult giving and difficult doing resonate? Do they feel completely alien, or do you see echoes in your own life, perhaps on a smaller scale?
And what kind of happiness are you actually pursuing? Is it the fleeting kind, the sensory kind, or maybe even the deeper piece of concentration? What does this ancient wisdom suggest about the ultimate nature of the happiness you seek?
And perhaps a final thought to leave you with. What does it truly mean to give or to act or even to meditate when your ultimate aim isn't just temporary satisfaction or even cosmic bliss within existence, but a happiness that transcends existence itself?